Welcome into STB Sports Take, simply the best sports podcast. I am your host, Sean Bingham. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Everywhere you get your podcasts, we are there. A very fun episode today. I got my swig here. Dave Portnoy in town just gave Swig a bad review. He's doing it wrong. Got my boys here. Got Dave Glauser, the lone Ute.
Let's go. Go Utes.
We've got Luke Salisbury. Lukish Delight. Lukish Delight. Is that a BYU Barbie cheerleader?
No.
I was probably like 10 or 11 years old. My family, we were traveling through, I want to say it was like the Seattle area. There was a Deseret Industries. Popped in as a family on a vacation. Anything BYU, especially when I was in like that junior high phase, I was buying it. It was.
It's awesome you got it back in the packaging too, because I know you had that out.
And we got Tyler Schwartz. Tyler, what props you got? Vintage.
I have from 1970 my grandpa's sweater from BYU.
Nice.
There you go.
That's pretty cool.
Very cool. And Dave, I see a lacrosse helmet in the background there, a Utah lacrosse helmet.
Yeah, go Utes. I played at the U, so lacrosse alumni. They're now the furthest west D1 program in the country. So with pride.
Okay, so guys, we're gonna make this fun. I gotta say, I try to be nonpartisan for the most part when I talk about sports, but when it comes to
No, you
BYU,
don't.
I want this one so bad. I want this one so bad, and it's mainly because of guys like Dave that make me want this more than I've wanted a game in a long, long time. So hopefully I don't jinx the Cougars, but I am on record. I want BYU to absolutely crush Utah tomorrow. So with that, let's dive in.
You're out of denial, Sean. I'm proud of you. You denied that for so long, and now you finally acknowledged what we've always known.
Well, like you said earlier, you radicalized me. I actually was like a very kind of even-keeled fan, and now when it comes to this rivalry, I can't take it anymore. I'm tired of made-up stories. I wish we had our friend Alan on here. I'd want to get proof of his stories. But but this rivalry game, guys, we're looking at the Wikipedia here. I got it pulled up. I've been to the vast majority of these games since I moved to Utah in 4th grade. Some of my very early childhood memories of sporting events with my dad are at BYU versus Utah games. And back then it was always around like Thanksgiving break. I remember lots of games where there was snow. And now it's all changed ever since, Utah went to the Pac-12, and now they're both in the Big 12, and it's just different. But I'm glad it is back, and it seems like it'll be a pretty regular thing again, maybe not every year. But BYU currently on a 6-year streak.
Wow.
140 days, I believe it is. Since
How
Utah
long has
last
it been
beat
since
BYU.
BYU won a conference championship? Why we're talking about misconstrued stats? They've not won it in how many decades now?
Well, we just
How
got into a
embarrassing.
conference, so.
Well, we weren't playing for most of the last 6 years. That's my point.
Yeah. No, but BYU's won the last 2 games against the Utes. Last year, a nail-biter. Came down to a final drive. There was a controversial hold call that freed up BYU to get another chance, make a good clutch drive, a very clutch kick by Will Farron, who I think it could come down to the final play again tomorrow. All right, we're going to give the floor first to our Ute friend, Dave Glauser. Let's start, guys, with core memories. Dave, what are some of your core memories of this BYU versus Utah rivalry? And guys, let's give him the respect, give him the floor.
Man, I've got a lot. Let me go with my first ones. Growing up, there was one other neighbor that was my age. I lived in an area, there was no kids my age, and he was the world's most obnoxious BYU fan. And so this is in the 90s. Every year when BYU beat us, he would get up the war directory and dial me on my landline and my family, ask for me, and then rub it into my face. And I hated it so bad. And Utah won a game, and I pull out that directory. I'm looking him up, and my dad hung up the phone, and he's like, "Hey, you're not calling him." And I was like, "What? He calls me every year." And he's like, "Yeah, and what do you think of him for it?" And I'm like, "I hate him." He's like, "Well, don't do it then. You don't want to be that guy." So he invited my dad and I to a game that BYU was favored by double digits, and it was in Provo. And it was totally like, "Hey, you want to come to the game so we can have someone to laugh at all game and rub it in your faces?" And I remember being like, "Dad, I don't want to go." And he's like, "No, we have to go, and never count out the Utes. You never know. Coach McBride's teams are tough." We went down there to Provo. Utah won. I believe it was one of the 34-31 games. Not only did Utah win, but I'm sitting in BYU. This is one of the coolest things I've ever seen with my eyes. And a BYU fan jumps over over the barrier and tackles a Utah cheerleader who, by the way, looks like a UFC fighter. He's just totally yoked, and he flips it on him and just starts pounding the dude in the face. That 10-year-old me, 9-year-old me, I was so excited. Then Steve Smith gets interviewed as they're winning, and he goes, "Man, even our cheerleaders are kicking your butts." And I was like, yes, this is the best case scenario. And then we had just the most beautifully awkward drive back to Salt Lake, trying not to rub it in. My dad was like, "Don't say a word about the game." And we get in the car, and I'm just sitting there in silence, just enjoying every second of it as we drive back to Salt Lake. 2004, I was in high school. We snuck on the
Real
field.
quick, let me cut you off. I was at that game as well, where the cheerleader. So for those that haven't seen, maybe I'll try and find the clip. But the fan got out of the stands onto the field and like tackled a cheerleader and tried to run back to his seat, tried to run back to the stands. The cheerleader got up and chased him down, tackled him, and beat the crap out of him. I watched it. It was actually hilarious. Very embarrassing for a BYU fan trying to be cool, but it was actually very epic. Okay, go ahead, Dave.
There's video of BYU security too that just like did nothing as the fan ran by. Then when the cheerleader flips it, all of a sudden they want to get involved and do their jobs. And then the BYU athletic director's response to that was so pathetic. He said, "We need to make some changes." You're like, "Yeah, keep the fans in the stands and don't have them assault cheerleaders." And he's like, "No, we need to have opposing teams aren't allowed to run their flags in our stadium anymore." And it's like, "Oh, okay, because your fans can't handle it, a bunch of sore losers." Anyway, 2004, Utah won, Fiesta Bowl year. We snuck on the field, fans throwing tortillas everywhere, which apparently is banned now for Texas Tech. But that was a core memory. It was great. So I'm going with those two for now.
Love it. Luke, you got one?
Nope, he doesn't. On to Tyler.
You're muted, Luke. Luke, we can't. Can you guys hear Luke?
I can't.
It must be a memory of a game
There
that
we
you
go.
won in the
There you
2010s because I don't hear anything.
What? No, I've got many, many memories. Grown up in Salt Lake, East Mill Creek area, and my mom and dad went to BYU, so I was a BYU fan. And, you know, Sean was saying earlier that he was radicalized recently. I was radicalized at an early age. Even in elementary school, Willington Elementary, the week of the rivalry, the halls were red. The day before the game, the Friday before the game, you know, almost all the students, almost all the teachers, red, red, red. And I'm a pretty outspoken, pretty, you know, loud, crazy kid. So I just had to lean into being a BYU fan. And it got to the point where, similar like Dave was saying, the Monday or even the next day at church, and then especially Monday at school, my entire life was either going to be the best day, just walking proud through the halls, or I was going to be the punching bag, be, you know, the number one person to be, you know, ridiculed for being a BYU fan, because there truly weren't many of us, at least in my school. So growing up, I used to take bus 811 from Salt Lake down to Provo to go to a lot of games. And, you know, I remember just my whole life going down, collecting gloves from players, and, you know, has also been there for a lot of these big matchups. My grandparents lived in Provo, and Norm Chow was the offensive coordinator for BYU at the time. And Norm Chow used to get me all sorts of, you know, signed items and all this swag and autographed jerseys and photos and stuff like that. So, lots of memories. Never forget, I believe, was it 99 or 2000? It was Lavelle's last year in Salt Lake. I don't remember the exact details. I think, was that Brandon Doman? BYU came from behind in Lavelle's last game as a head coach. You know, huge win in Rice-Eccles Stadium. That was a big core memory for me. You know, just down the street from my house, but being there for Lavelle's last game is a big, you know, specific game for me.
Awesome. Tyler, what do you got?
Oh gosh, man. I was trying to think. So growing up, we didn't really have television in our home. And so I was always listening to the BYU games on the radio, listening to the play-by-play. And I remember just laying at night on the couch, just imagining the games, listening to it. That was always like so fun for me. But one of my favorite memories is, where most recent, is the John Beck to Harleen pass in 2006. I was listening to sports radio today, and they brought that up, and I just got chills just listening to that, because it was, I mean, what John Beck had, he was just in the pocket and then moving around for 15, 20 seconds after the clock had already expired.
I don't know what Utah was thinking, rushing like nobody on that play, but that was the That was the
So
thought
bad.
process. Let's just give
So
them all the
bad.
time in the world.
Even worse, the play before, there was like, I want to say there was 9 seconds left and they blitzed, they brought the house, which is like, what a way to ensure that there's 2 plays left, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got that backwards. Gary Anderson.
But yeah, that play though really just like sealed it for me. I do remember one time in church though, after BYU won, they had the hymns. I think it was like 2009, 2008, but it had the score of BYU, and then the second hymn was number 2, and then it was the Ute score, and it was basically saying BYU won like 26-23, and those were the hymns we sang. So
We always had
I
that
just
growing
thought
up
that was
too when
so
Utah
funny.
won.
But definitely just growing up as a kid listening to it, and then that John Beck to Harleen was just unreal.
Yeah, that Beck to Harlene's one of my favorite as well. So that was at Rice Eccles, and I was there as well for that one. And fun fact, this is in 2006, I snuck into that game. I told my mom, I said, I'm not going to pay the Utes a dime. I'm sneaking into the stadium. I did. And so, Utah, if you're listening to this, hit me up. I'll pay you for the ticket.
I love how this started off by Sean saying, I used to be neutral and not care, and I've been radicalized this year. And now all of a sudden, back in 2006, he's sneaking in because the Utes can't get a dime.
So I sneak in, and I sat in the wuss. I think they call it the muss, but it's the wuss. Their student section. They're making all their very standard Mormon jokes, which, by the way, any Utah fans listening, you got to come up with new material. Most of you guys are Mormon anyway. Come up with something new. So they're making all their Mormon jokes at us the entire game. And we're sitting there just holding strong, me and one friend, and it looks like we're going to lose. Looks like BYU's going to lose. And then that Beck to Harleen happens. It was like silence in that stadium. Like you could hear, especially in our section where it was nothing but Utah fans, you could hear nothing but me and my friend just freaking out, cheering. That is a very core memory for me. Another one is the where George, it went into overtime in Prov. I think it was 2008 or 2009, and it went into overtime, and George catches the game-winning touchdown where the two Utes end up colliding with each other, trying to get him before he catches the ball. We rush the field. So BYU wins in overtime on a walk-off touchdown. Rush the field. I'm down there. I've got this BYU flag. I run over to the Utah section in the stadium, and I'm holding the BYU flag up. And somebody throws a full soda can at me that had not even been opened yet. It's like a bullet coming at me, like a brick.
I think it was me, yeah.
Of course, coming from an unathletic Ute fan, it missed me. But I remember at that moment thinking, I'm going to step back a little bit, maybe not be where a brick can hit me. It was an actual soda can, like a 12-ounce soda can, hard as a rock. Core memory there too. But I got to admit, and got to be real here with everything. I have sat through in Rice Eccles stadiums absolute beatdowns where I stayed to the bitter end, even though we were getting our butts kicked. And I've seen it both ways. I was at that 3-0 game where BYU lost 3-0 at home in the freezing cold. There's been some epic battles. We sat through the 9-game losing streak as BYU fans. Finally, now we've got 2 in a row. But one thing I talked with Spencer Linton yesterday. He's the voice of BYU Sports Nation. And I asked him, I said, why do you think it is that BYU has not been able to win big against Utah in almost 30 years now? Because this is a very tightly contested matchup, but there have been 3 or 4 blowouts all in favor of Utah. So, Dave, I'm curious, other than a nice we're the little brother joke, do you have any reasoning why you think it is that when Utah is heavily favored, they win big? When BYU is heavily favored, they just barely squeak it out, kind of like last year. And when it's evenly matched, it's evenly matched. But there's never really a blowout for BYU.
Yeah, it's because BYU is never really that good. I hate to tell you, but they're not. I know they were good in the 70s or 80s before I was alive, and all they really did was beat up on a bunch of Mountain West teams. Lavelle Edwards had a losing record against P5 teams, so I don't know why it was that impressive. But, they are habitually overranked. They're one of the worst teams against the spread in the early 2000s and over the 2010s. I know they've been better recently, but they're always overrated. The spread is always way too high for BYU. Whittingham is 11-5 against the spread against BYU. And so they're never that good. I'm sorry, they're not. Look last year. I know you want to look and be oh, BYU is so much better in Utah. Yeah, I mean they were. Utah was pretty awful last year. But BYU wasn't blowing the doors off of anybody last year. They were squeaking by bad team after bad team after bad team. That's what they've always done. And I got to hand it to Retzlaff. The dude has ice in his veins when the game's on the line. But for 3.5 quarters, he wasn't that good, man. He wasn't. I'm sorry. He just wasn't. And that's why they're playing Oklahoma State, who didn't win a conference game, and they're playing them in Provo, and they win because of like last second miracle. And I'm supposed to believe that this BYU team is so great and they're going to come in and destroy Utah. Not going to happen. We had a defense, and that's all we needed for it to be close. And so, everything that could have gone wrong for Utah went wrong in that game, and we still lost by 1 point after some questionable officiating, including a missed penalty on Utah's athletic director, I'll acknowledge. So yeah, that's my very biased answer on why BYU never wins by a blowout. They're not that good. Never are.
Let me give a little respect to Lavelle's name. He was 22-9 against the Utes, so you can say how he was some trash coach.
He beat Utah in the 70s. He must be really good. What was he against Coach Mack? Wasn't he?
And 80s and 90s and 2000s.
Not 90s. Go look at his record in the 90s. Coach McBride, by the way, who got fired by Utah, I believe he was 500 or pretty close to it against Lavelle Edwards. And we're not naming our stadium after that guy. I love him. He actually was to blame or he gets credit for the reemergence of Utah football becoming the power that they are today. But he did get fired. Lavelle was like almost 50-50 against him.
You were saying how BYU barely squeaked by last year?
5-5 in the 90s, by the way. 5-5 in the 90s.
There we go. Yeah. When Utah's decent, it's always close, and Utah's at worst 50-50.
My favorite, though, is last year when Utah played Colorado and lost, and Coach Witt goes, "This is by far the best team we've played this year." After losing to BYU, and then BYU steamrolled Colorado.
Okay.
It wasn't even like a competition. I just think mentally when BYU and Utah go up against each other, I will say I think Utah is better coached and better prepared mentally for the matchup than BYU is. And I hate saying that.
Better players, too.
That's the truth.
Better players. They have more players in the NFL, and they have for most of my adult lifetime. They've out-recruited BYU every year except for last year. Like, you got to acknowledge that. And let's be real. To defend Whittingham's comment, anybody with eyes who knows an ounce of football that watched the Utah versus BYU game and the Utah versus Colorado game would reach the exact same conclusion that he did. And bowl games in today's day and age with a playoff, like teams care less and less about those. You have more players sitting out. Like I don't know that the bowl game is that impressive.
No one was sitting out.
No, come on. They played all their guys. Dion made it a big deal. This matters, and BYU absolutely stomped on them. Like, do not pull that.
You think bowl games? People get as excited about bowl games as they did 10 years ago.
I think they got more excited about them 10 years ago.
Yeah, they were more excited about bowl games 10 years ago. That's what I'm saying.
No, I'm saying they're more excited about them now than they were 10 years ago.
They're becoming obsolete.
But Dion made it very clear we're playing all of our guys. We're here to win. Nobody sat out. You can't name a guy that was important on that team that sat out. So don't take that away from BYU. And Whittingham was for sure making a jab at BYU. He for sure was.
Go watch the Utah BYU game, watch the Utah Colorado game, and then look at me with a straight face with your hand on the Bible and say, yeah, anyone that watched those games would reach the conclusion that BYU is the better team. It's not going to happen. Right. So later on, a game was played where the outcome was different. But based on what his team experienced, of course, that's the obvious conclusion to reach.
I think the obvious conclusion to reach is that he was bitter that his team lost in a last second drive to his rival, who by the way, for those listening that don't know, he went to BYU. In fact, their entire coaching staff went to BYU. The entire Utah coaching staff went to BYU.
That's not true. Plenty of them went to the U. What about Morgan Scalley and most of the defensive staff?
The running back coach, the head coach. We got to go through the whole list. I sent you the thing of the favorite Utes, and it's like there's like 6 coaches on that staff that played at BYU.
Most of the offensive staff did. Most of the defensive staff did not. As opposed to BYU, whose defense was abysmal. They were losing to Northern Illinois and Eastern Carolina, and anybody with a pulse was beating BYU in Provo when they had a defensive coordinator who was Sataki's first pick, right? BYU guy. And now they went out, they hired a bunch of Utah grads, a bunch of people who learned how to coach at the U, learned from Whittingham, and now they have a good defense. I got to hand it to them. They finally learned, they got smart. They said, we got to poach some from Utah. We need to hire some of these Utes if we're going to play any defense and stop losing to these pitiful programs.
And your awful offense needed some help, so you guys had to go and hire Beck to finally get an offense.
I mean, I can't deny that. That's
okay.
And The beauty about anything that Whittingham does is it all comes under that Lavelle Edwards tree. It just is all Lavelle, baby.
That coach that wasn't so
which
good, remember?
didn't he go to Utah State? Didn't he get a master's at the U?
I don't know. Didn't you get a law degree at BYU?
You seem to fixate on where the coaches went to school, so
It is cool though how intertwined these two teams are. How both programs are BYU and Utah roots, and it's just so cross. Like Satake was at Utah for the longest time,
it's
and
amazing.
then he saw the light.
It's amazing. And for the last several minutes we've been talking, I've had this screen share up, but there have been some Utah blowouts, which we've talked about. But look at this. It is the most one-score games, the highest percentage of one-score games in all of college football since 1997, which is the last 28 years. So these games, while Utah has got the better of BYU in those last 28 years, I don't know what the record is. We could look it up real quick. But Utah for sure has more wins in the last 28 years because they had that 9-game streak.
Mm-hmm.
But almost all of them are one-score games. So it's very likely that tomorrow will be as well. I guess we'll soon find out. But one thing that I thought about, because I was really debating this, I'm like, why is it that BYU? Because Dave, I know you don't like BYU, and so you're going to say that they're overrated and blah blah blah. But there is something about them just not getting up for the game against Utah, and I don't really get it. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the players. I was talking to our friend who we all know, Mike Miller, about this yesterday, and he was like, I think by the time they play the U, they're so full of themselves on campus at BYU. It is just a much smaller world in Provo than it is in Salt Lake. And maybe they just get so full of themselves that they're just riding high and they just don't prepare the same. They think they're too cool. And another theory he had, by the way, this is very out there, but it does make sense for those that understand the culture in Provo with the honor code, is he's like, when they're really good, they probably get lots of girls and then they get in trouble. And then they're worried about getting kicked out of school, kicked off the team. And then they just have all sorts of issues. That was one of his theories. And
sounds like Mike.
You wonder if it's coaching. Dave, you said something. I want you to tell us what you said. So Max Hall had a very iconic post-game interview after he finally got the better of Utah. It was a great win. That was the Hall to George game, right? In overtime. It was after that game that I mentioned where the Sprite can got thrown at me. So Max Hall goes on the post game and just says that he hates Utah, hates everything about them. They're classless, blah, blah, blah. And then Dave, take it away.
I don't know if I want to tell that story. That's just Utah fan lore. I have no idea if it's actually true or not. I like to believe it, but I make sure you include the asterisk that I don't know if this is true. But the folklore is that Whittingham heard that interview and was like, as long as I'm the coach here, we're never going to lose those guys again. And then they won 9 in a row after that game. So, I think it did probably light the fire. I think that in the 90s when, BYU probably had the better team a lot of years, Utah for sure had a chip on their shoulder. I don't think that's been true for quite some time now, but I think it's been a big motivating factor for a lot of Utah players. Also, I think it's worth noting, you guys are going to push back on this answer that I believe this more than the previous answer I gave, but Utah doesn't get blown out very much. They just don't. Like, it's Kyle Whittingham's style of play. Last year we lost, we went 5-7. Only one game was more than one possession that Utah lost by, and that was the Colorado game. Every other game they're losing by 3. They're losing every week, but they're losing by 3 or by 7 or by 6. Kyle Whittingham's teams are tough. They play good defense, and they don't have a lot of games where they just kind of come out and sleepwalk through it. I will say what's kind of interesting is if Utah does have a habit of sleepwalking through games, it's the big marquee games. It's when it's when College Game Day or Fox Big Noon kickoff comes. Utah's I sent you guys the stats earlier on that. I think they're
2-8 or something like that.
2-8 in those games. Most of them played under Whittingham. Sometimes when they get too much attention, they had to lose a couple Pac-12 championships before they were able to win one. It's just kind of sometimes it did seem like the spotlight was a little too bright, but it doesn't seem to be the case for the BYU game. But I do think it's very consistent with Utah's brand that even the early years of the Pac-12 when they were struggling, they weren't getting blown out very often. They were losing close games to really good USC, Washington, Oregon teams pretty consistently. So I think that is more about Kyle Whittingham than it is any kind of specific rivalry dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave, I want to take a second and congratulate you guys. I don't know if you had a celebration. You guys finally did win a home game in the Big 12. That's exciting. Took a year and a half, but the Utes got it done, so that's cool.
We're tied 1-1 at the Ute.
Okay, guys, we're gonna shift gears real quick and play a little game of Would You Rather. We're gonna start with Luke. Luke, would you rather have BYU win tomorrow against Utah,
Yes.
or be given $5,000? But
BYU win. BYU win.
Dave, would you rather Utah win tomorrow, or you get $5,000 but BYU wins?
Utah win.
I don't know if these guys are rich or if they just love their team that much. Tyler?
I'd take BYU for sure. 5,000. I would think this isn't arrogant, but just 5,000 isn't that much anymore. And I feel like a BYU win to go against Utah is just so much more superior. The trash talk, the bragging rights, I think it's so much better.
It does give you a whole nother year of just being able to rub it in anytime somebody brings something up.
Yeah.
I don't know what I would take. $5,000's not a small amount. What about 10 grand? Would you guys take 10 grand, but your team loses tomorrow?
Well, here's a question. If I take the 10 grand, does that mean Utah automatically loses, or does that mean it's just a game like it's going to be played anyway? Because I'd take the 10 grand out of confidence in my Utes.
No, they lose tomorrow.
Oh, then give me the win.
Would you take, Luke, would you take 10 grand or the BYU win?
The win.
Tyler, would anyone take the money?
Give me the dub.
It feels like dirty money. Like I don't want 10 grand for a loss for my team. Like,
well, but these are hypotheticals. Like they'd still go play the game, but it ends in Utah losing.
yeah, well, you got to draw the line somewhere, man. I can't. Not a sellout.
Sean, how about this on a would you rather? Would you rather Utah, so Dave, vice versa, BYU win for us or Utah win tomorrow or win the Big 12 championship? I would personally rather beat Utah than a Big 12 championship.
I would take a Big 12 championship because that's going to mean a spot in the playoffs.
Luke, what about you?
I would go to the playoff.
Yeah, I'd take the championship. Even if the playoff wasn't on the line, I'd take a conference championship.
The playoffs, but we know the playoffs on the line for the conference championship now, right?
Yeah, I think of 2021 when Utah lost to BYU, then won the Pac-12 once they figured out Cam Rising was the best quarterback on their roster. Yeah, I would take that. The loss to BYU, that feels like nothing compared to how fun it was to win the Pac-12, go to the Rose Bowl.
Didn't you guys lose in the Rose Bowl both years, Penn State?
Hey, but we have been to a Rose Bowl.
Wait, is that the year that
let me tell you a funny
BYU
story
was
about
that BYU was like I think we were the Pac-12 South champs that season. I think we won 6
What's the
Pac-12
best bowl
games.
game BYU's ever been to? Have they ever been to one that's like
The national
semi-impressive?
championship. The national.
They didn't. What bowl game did they play in? They didn't play in a national championship.
It was the Holiday Bowl. It was the national championship.
Again, no, it was not the national championship. It was against the 6-6 Michigan team. National championship implies that the winner wins the championship. Wait, this is a funny story about the comment that Tyler just made. I went to Big Noon Kickoff at the U a few weeks ago, and I was with my wife, my lovely wife, and I saw a Texas Tech fan holding a sign that said, "You lost 2 Rose Bowls, nobody cares." And I literally stopped my wife and I pointed out and I said, that is such a weird thing for a Texas Tech fan to say, because it's the only person on earth that would make a comment like that is a BYU fan, because everyone else in college football isn't too prideful to admit that like actually going to a Rose Bowl is really kind of sick, and that was a phenomenal game. And I'm like, that's so weird. I'm just shocked that Texas Tech fan would do that. And then I log on to Twitter and that guy's picture is going viral because someone took a picture of him with that sign. And he's a student body officer at BYU that bought Texas Tech stuff and went down there. And I'm like, I called it. The only person that would make some lame, pointless talking point like that lives somewhere in the Provo vicinity. It's the only way. Everyone else has too much common sense.
Dave, you also lived in the Provo vicinity for multiple years.
Yeah. Why do you think I know? Why do you think I know where those kind of comments come from?
Jake's want to know one.
Okay, I want to pull something up here. This is a fun argument Dave and I have occasionally. All right, we have a list of national champions on the NCAA
Oh gosh, don't
website.
go here.
Okay.
Don't go here.
So we're on the NCAA official website, just a list of national champions, football championship history. And we have in 1984, Brigham Young, across the board, same as everybody else. Everything you could possibly get, they got. And I'm just going to do a control find, see if we can find Utah anywhere on here.
Weird. No Utah.
Nothing. I know the 2008 they want to point to. I just see Florida.
I'll tell you what you don't want to do, Sean, is you don't want to talk about the on-field accomplishments from that season. No way. You trust me, don't go there. It It does not work in your favor. You don't want to talk about who they beat or how much they beat them by or how many
Well, they
ranked
beat
teams they played or
well, they
what
beat
bowl game they
everybody.
played in. You just want to talk about who voted for what. Who were these random, we don't even know who they are, AP voters, and what did they vote for? And then, Sean, in the same conversation, you want to turn around and complain about AP voters in the year 2025, which you were doing just the other day. So you know
Wait,
the AP
what did
voting
I
is a
complain about
scam
the other
system.
day with
The
AP voters?
NCAA changed this system because they saw BYU was by far not the best team in the country, which, by the way, their own quarterback admitted they would have gotten wrecked if they played
Yes,
Washington
they
or one of
changed
these
it
better
from
teams.
1984,
And they said,
and then they decided 14 years later, let's go back and revisit that and create the BCS because of 1984.
they did. They literally they cite that as the biggest sham national championship of all time, the most undeserved, and there's no disputing that. All you can say is just, hey, they voted for it. They voted for it because you definitely don't want to talk. You don't pull up their schedule or who
I
they
do want to
played. Like,
I do want to talk about who they beat that year, and that is everybody. Every
no, they
single
didn't.
team they played.
They beat a bunch of Mountain West teams and 6-6 Michigan. They didn't beat anybody good. How many
Another
ranked
We
teams
fun
they
beat
beat?
fact.
Pitt
Another
that
fun
year.
fact.
Hey, could you screen share the article I just pulled up?
Yeah, you're right. They
Can you
didn't
send it
beat
to me?
anyone good that year. Utah, 24-14.
Were you under the impression that Utah is good that year?
I don't know. Yeah, I thought
Also,
you
another
stuck
point:
by
how
your
many of us?
team.
How many of us were alive in 1984?
I was.
Yeah, yeah.
So okay, let's
All
go
right,
through
click
the
that link,
history.
Sean. Click that link.
Where is it? You didn't? Did you send it
It's
to
in the
me?
chat on your little on
BYU
right
did
there.
beat
Oh, it's in
number
this chat.
3
Okay, hang on.
Pitt. That
Yeah.
does seem at Pitt. That does seem.
What did they do, Luke? Now look at
Jeez.
Pitt. How did they
It's a
finish?
Salt Lake Tribune link. This is propaganda.
No, the Trib. You
propaganda.
can't trust the Trib.
Well, who do they reference? Who do they cite in that?
There are no Utah fans, just BYU haters. That's
Hang
all I
on.
have to say.
Hey, that's my line. That's why you guys are coming to Big Noon Kickoff in Salt Lake. Luke, hey, how did that Pitt team finish?
Well, after getting destroyed by BYU, they just took all the air out of their
Dave, here you
sails.
go.
So what was their record? You got to answer the question.
I don't know.
3-7. gives
3-7,
credit
Luke?
as national champs.
Dang,
This
that's
article
crazy.
is in 2018. Imagine 10 and a half years later having to cry so much that they give you like a consolation prize bogus national championship
Wait,
that
who
they don't
cried?
acknowledge on their own website.
Who cried?
They have to have propaganda Salt Lake Tribune.
Hold on, Sean. Who
talking
cried?
about it. The Utes.
Did they? Who?
Yes.
Who?
You, all the fans.
I didn't. I was pleasantly
I
surprised.
will say
when
that
saw
was a
this, and I
great
said,
year
good.
for Utah. But you
Hey,
talk about
here's-
teams not carrying in a bowl. Alabama got left out of the BCS and could not have been more disappointed. If there was ever a team that didn't care about their bowl game, it was
Not true.
Alabama in that Sugar
That's not
Bowl.
true. That's not true. That's not true at all. Alabama had never won. They hadn't won a recent national championship at the time that this happened. This was before Saban's first one. This team was still amped. They were the number one team in the country most of the year, and
Which
they
is
were
why they
they
were so
were
disappointed to be left out of the national championship.
they lost the SEC championship game. They were still the look. I know I would not expect 3 BYU fans to understand. So just stick with me here. But the Sugar Bowl is actually a lot of fun. It's a big deal. It's a big game. It's coveted. BYU, if they ever played in it, it'd be the greatest thing they ever did. The biggest game they ever played in. They never will.
Outside
But
of the
had
national
they ever
championship
done
game.
it, it was they never could get there. But if they did, then you would all understand. It's actually it's a big deal. It's a lot of fun. Alabama was pumped. They came out firing. That loss stung. And you know what? Here's the other fact that you got wrong. Utah didn't cry about anything. The NCAA awarded that to Utah on their own, as you just saw in that article. The Pac-12 acknowledged it. Utah actually never put out a press release about that. So they never acknowledged it. The University of Utah never did anything about it. But if we're being honest, what we should pull up 1984 BYU and pull up that UCF team that went undefeated and go look at who played tougher opponents that year and what they beat them by, the margins of victory. That's the debate we should have, because never has a team done less than that 84 team and been awarded a national championship.
So, Dave, how is it, in all seriousness, try and take a step back, take off the BYU hatred goggles. How is
this is not
really,
the debate to have.
Really deep down, how is what the AP did for years and years and years, how is it any different than what the committee is doing right now? The
The
committee just
committees,
simply votes.
no, they
They just
don't.
say
What do you
we.
mean?
They just the
Hold
committee
on.
just said these are the teams we're putting in.
Yeah, and then those teams have to go win a national championship. They have to go play the other teams that are in there and win. And by the way, BYU's own quarterback that year said, "Hey, if we had to play any of those teams, we would have got whacked. We would have gotten totally. We were not the best team in the country. So good thing
That,
BYU didn't have to play in a Sugar Bowl, or they would have been
that's a
exposed.
good humble champion thing to say. A lot of guys.
They would have been exposed.
Michael Jordan is on record saying that he's not the greatest of all time, which is exactly part of the reason we all know he is.
It's great. It's just great that they didn't have to play any other good teams that year, so that Luke can forever talk about what happened in a year when he wasn't even alive. Hey, by the way, Utah, next we should debate Utah's like 1954 basketball national championship. We should talk about that. That'd be fun.
Sorry, at least one of us was alive in '84, so we're only talking about
You don't remember it.
lifetime. No, we should talk about all the Utah Heisman winners. Oh, none of those either. So zero
How was he as a
Heisman,
coach?
zero national championships.
How was he as a coach, though?
I think his high school team was pretty good.
Again, you guys want to talk about like what? So much of this is like, hey, we're losing. Let's talk about 1980 something. Let's talk about before Dave and Luke were alive. Let's
Tyler.
go back when TV was black and white, the good old days. Like,
Hey,
come
we had
on
color
now.
TV then.
Hey,
It was
That,
color.
that
Look,
just shows.
color.
That just shows.
BYU's on a winning streak. You got to
will-
give us some credit here.
I will.
If you're
I
talking
will-
about
I will give it that
recency,
credit.
it's been
does
6
go to
years.
show how sad it's been for the last 30 years, 20 years for BYU that they just are constantly stuck in the 80s. Like, yeah, you tell me, oh, I'm living in the 2010s. Well, at least I remember the 2010s. The 80s, but here's the truth. My dad actually told me there was a time when I was like, you know what? Utah might never lose to BYU again because we're beating them every single year. We're trending up, we're trending down. And my dad truthfully told me, he said, you don't know what it was like to be a Utah fan in the 80s. I'll promise you something. The shoe will always be on the other foot. Eventually, the shoe will be on the other foot. And I'm like, Dad, I think you're wrong. And then last year, I was like, oh man, the shoe's on the other foot. How did this happen? This is terrible. And BYU got a win, and it goes to show that BYU's best team in what 2 decades played Utah's worst team in 2 decades and won by 1 point after controversial calls, after Utah's quarterback got hurt at halftime and they were already playing their third string, after they returned to kick for a touchdown, after, I mean, everything that could have gone BYU's way did, and they still won by 1 point. It just goes to show how far the gap was. And I'll give props. BYU has closed the gap. They've closed the gap. But my gosh, that was a ocean wide. That was Pacific Ocean wide between the two programs.
Dave, they haven't closed the gap. The gap is now in the other direction. BYU is coming off of a great year last year where they really should have been Big 12 champs. Got the tiebreaker went awry on us.
Jokes, man, jokes.
All just a big tiebreaker issue. Stomped on Colorado just to make sure everybody knew who the best team in the Big 12 was last year. And now 6-0 this year.
Wait, didn't Arizona State beat BYU?
Haven't lost to Utah in 6 years. So there is a gap right now, and it's in BYU's favor. You have to acknowledge that. It's been 6 years since Utah beat BYU, and Utah's coming off of a losing season and 2 straight losses.
BYU's won 2 games in a row, and I guess we'll see tomorrow what the gap looks like. But wait. The best team in the conference was ASU last year. Didn't BYU play them? Because they won the conference. What happened?
Well, we lost in overtime. Rough deal.
Shoot, man.
On the road.
I guess they weren't the best team in the Big 12 last year.
Well, I'll also say like, BYU's definitely erased that gap. Recruiting is, last season or 2 years ago in BYU's direction. NIL definitely has the edge for BYU. Looking at, the future of, college sports, basketball, football, the momentum is definitely in BYU's favor. And honestly, if Witt retires this year, I honestly can't blame him. I know he wanted to come back one more season to hopefully get, finish with a win against BYU, but
or at least get to a bowl game.
Hey, you want to talk about
coach,
if you want to claim that gap, like whatever, go look at the transfer portal ratings. Why didn't BYU bring any like half decent transfers? Utah had the better transfer class. So I guess the debate should be what's more important, recruiting high school kids that may or may not pan out, that may or may not transfer in a year, or recruiting proven players like first team All Mountain West quarterback Devin Dampier. That's who you want to be bringing in through the door. And
Mountain West
did great.
Mountain West? You're talking about the Mountain West? Bro,
yeah.
I thought you were just dissing on the Mountain West not too long ago. But now you're saying we just brought a quarterback from the Mountain West. Like,
Somebody's got to
make
tell
it
him the
make
difference
sense.
between the WAC and the Mountain West.
Not
No,
much
hey,
difference now.
no,
But
yeah.
yeah, I think like getting a first team all conference Mountain West quarterback is pretty nice. He's looked pretty nice this year.
Yeah, I
Definitely
mean,
an upgrade from the pig farmer. I did love the pig farmer was endearing, and the story, you gotta love that and hope nothing but the best for him. But yeah, Dampier for sure, massive upgrade.
Step up. He's playing all right at Utah State though.
And
okay, so
you know, it's like as a BYU fan, I have to admit, you know, Utah the last dozen years, it's scary to think if they actually had like a average quarterback, what could have happened.
yeah,
I mean,
and
Huntley's in the NFL still, but
But a lot of those seasons, I feel like, and that was me. I was probably trying to be complimentary, saying, you know, Utah had almost every piece except for a quarterback, quite a few seasons.
I think that's true. Yeah, I agree with that.
but there are more star players from BYU in the NFL right now.
Yeah,
We've
that's
got
probably true.
Fred Warner, Puka Nakua,
Van Noy,
Kyle Van
Hill.
Noy.
Jamal Williams. I don't know.
What, were you talking stars, or are you just naming BYU players now? Like, is Jamal Williams still in the NFL?
I don't know.
Stars,
actually.
Puka Nakua.
He's just naming players. Devin Lloyd might be the best linebacker.
I do think it is interesting, though, that whenever BYU and Utah plays, even if BYU is the better team, they still find a way to choke against Utah. Like, I think Witt does a fantastic job at mentally preparing his guys, by far better than BYU with Mendenhall, with Croton. Satake is a little bit better, but BYU struggles after a very emotional win. They always kind of have a crash after an emotional
There's no question that Utah has had the coaching advantage, like decidedly had the coaching advantage ever since Lavelle retired. Croton was bad. I thought Bronco was a good coach, but he wasn't as good as Whittingham. And I do, you know, and obviously Urban Meyer, he was only there for 2 years, but man, talk about turning a program around. Urban Meyer single-handedly turned that program around. And then you've had Whittingham ever since, and Whittingham's just been a better coach than whoever BYU's had. But I do think Kalani Sitake has greatly closed that gap and maybe even surpassed him. I do think the game is passing Whittingham by a tiny little bit at this point. I think he's just getting old and tired and probably hates the new game of NIL and the absolute just, you know, rat race it is to try and recruit guys using money now in a legal way anyway. But it feels like Kalani is a big difference maker for BYU at this point. And I think that is probably why going into the rivalry game, Bronco was just, I don't know if he was just out thinking himself or what was going on, but it just felt like BYU was never prepared. And I loved, last year I was in Europe, and so I only got to wake up. With the time zone change, I woke up and just caught literally the last 2 minutes of that game. And I turned it on. And I could not believe it. Looked like BYU was for sure going to lose. And I was like, how are we doing this again? Like, this is like a decimated Utah team. Like, how are we not able to just put them away? But I loved seeing a clutch drive by Jake Retzloff and then a clutch kick by Will Farron, because those are things we really haven't seen out of BYU much in years past against Utah. It's more of like, it feels like a choke job, even when they're the better team. So hopefully that's shifting, because there's nothing I want more than like a really entertaining game tomorrow, which for me would either be a BYU blowout or a really close game.
Yeah.
All right, so guys, we're going to go into our predictions here. Dave, I'm going to let you go second to last. I'll go very last. But we're going to start with Tyler, then we'll go to Luke, then Dave, okay? All right, Tyler, what do you got? Who's winning tomorrow?
Whoa, my heart.
Be honest with yourself.
My heart says BYU, but honestly, like just the logical side says Utah, but I have to pull for my Cougs. I do think it's a close game. I don't think it's a blowout. Both teams are so evenly matched. On paper, it's absolutely evenly matched. It's not going to be a blowout. I think BYU wins by a field goal.
Okay, Luke, what do you got?
I'm going to go BYU 24, Utah 23. They're so evenly matched, like you said, across the board. It's going to come down to Utah not being able to stop the run. The running attack of LJ Martin and Bear Bachmeier is going to be too much. Utah or BYU pulls off a very, very close game, 24-21.
Wait, you said 24-23, and then you said 24-21. Which one?
24-23.
BYU math.
24-23.
This math.
I did not study finance at BYU, obviously, as we can tell here.
All right, Dave, who you got?
Oh, let's see. All right, BYU. They've got some really good linebackers. I got to give credit where credit is due. I think their linebackers are good. They're just not good enough. Devin Dampier's great. BYU's linebackers are fast. Utah has athletic tackles that are going to get to the second level. They're going to get some good blocks in. I will say, to give BYU a little more credit, I do think if this game is close, I don't feel good about it. If Sataki's teams have shown anything in the last few years, it's that if it's close, the bounce just goes, the ball bounces their way, they pull it off, they do what they need to do to get the wins. So if it's end of the fourth quarter, it's a 1-score game, I'm going to be thinking BYU is going to get the dub. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be a 2-score game. Dampier's going to be able to move the ball. He's not going to throw over the top, but he's going to do it enough, maybe 1 or 2. And Utah is going to win 75% of the plays are going to go Utah's way, but BYU is going to have more explosive big plays on both sides of the ball. I think that's an obvious weakness of Utah, obvious strength of BYU. Final pick is going to be, I wrote down so I can be consistent. We're going to go 28-17 Utah. I'm going to the game. I'm wearing all red. I'm taking my Utah flag. I'm coming home after Utah scores 28 and BYU scores 17. I'm taking this dusty old hat that I found
That's
in
my
garage,
hat.
and I am burning it in my backyard.
That's
Go
my
Utes, baby. Go Utes.
That's my hat.
That's my hat.
That's my hat. Oh man,
That's a nice one. I got that
Okay.
one from eBay recently. I like that one a lot.
I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh man. Okay,
Let me
great.
just give
great analysis.
one really
Go ahead.
quick story. I made the mistake before of leaving a hat in Dave's car. And actually, I can grab that hat real quick. Let me show you what happened.
This wasn't me, by the way. Luke, you got to tell it that it was not me.
Well, this car was left. So this hat was left in Dave's car, and then I believe Dave's brother Steve borrowed Dave's car and saw this BYU hat that I had left in there and said, "Get in this crap," and threw my hat, like literally just like threw it out the window, I believe, on the street. And how'd you get it back to me, Dave?
I think you
driving
found
by
it in the
States?
gutter. I didn't even
Is
know
that
where
how
it
it
was.
happened?
Luke came
So this
over
is
and
that
saw
hat.
it in the gutter.
You can see it got a little wear up here. I actually still really like this hat. It's just
Such a Ute
this-
thing to do.
do not leave your possessions near Utes. Dave, I need that hat back.
I thought you learned.
I
man.
need
I
that hat
thought you learned.
back.
Okay, my prediction real quick. So a couple things. You guys talked about how that was very close on paper. That is crazy, crazy accurate and true. Rush yards per game, Utah has a 10-yard average, or sorry, a 10-yard advantage over BYU. It's 248 to 238, basically identical. Rush yards allowed per game, BYU has a pretty big advantage, 104 to 142. Pass yards per game, it's a 1-yard difference, 210 to 211. Insane how close they are there. Pass yards allowed per game, only a 6-yard difference, 159 to 153. The one thing I'm worried about, I talked about this with Spencer yesterday, is third down conversion. Utah, I don't know if Dave, you knew this, maybe you heard it on yesterday's show, but Utah is the best in the country at third down conversions. 61%, BYU only 44%. That to me is a real worry, because I do think that Devin Dampier is really good at what he does. So if BYU can neutralize that, and I don't think BYU just has good linebackers, I think they have the best two inside linebackers in the entire country. So with Isaiah Glasker and Jack Kelly, those two guys together, if they can just have a spy on Dampier and contain him from running too much, I think they can neutralize his short game, his dink and dunk game just enough. That to me, that's going to be the key, right? If they can do that, I think BYU can win this game. But if he can just chip away 6 yards at a time, one thing that BYU fans are forgetting, you don't have to have big spectacular plays. Just chip away 4 yards, 3 yards, 6 yards, and you get first down after first down after first down. So to me, I'm looking at that third down, and if BYU can just hold Utah under their average of 61% third down conversion, then BYU wins the game. If they can't, then I do think Utah will win. But I'm going to go with my heart as well and say that BYU wins a close one. I think they win by 3. I think it's going to be low scoring because both defenses are really solid. Both passing games are pretty mediocre. So I do think it's going to be a lot of running, which means a lot of clock running out, which means lower scoring. So I'm going to predict a low scoring game, probably around 23-20 for BYU. But we'll see. I will also be there. I'll come find you, Dave, and I'll make fun of you the whole car ride home since that one kid didn't get to.
All right. I'll take my motorcycle.
Are you taking your motorcycle?
No, I'll be too cold.
You should. Parking's a disaster otherwise.
Yeah, I usually take it up to Utah games when it's warm, but it's gonna be too chilly getting home tomorrow.
Dave,
Where are
who
you
going
guys? Where are you
with?
sitting?
12th row. I believe we're in the Utah section.
Okay, so you're in the crappy corner.
So
of the
you're
end
in
zone.
like the beer splash
That-
zone.
Yeah. Hey, I
That's
better
all.
get ice cream. I've been to Utah BYU games, a Utah fan. I've never got ice cream, but they're always trying to hit me with the self-righteous. We give opposing fans ice cream. I'm like, all I ever get is a bunch of rude comments and disrespectful
And a bunch of
gestures made
this.
towards me. When do I get some ice cream?
Pace.
I'm in the
Stool
north
Presidente.
section 21, row 12.
Okay.
Who coming with
yeah.
Dave?
Me and Callie.
Oof.
Just
Taking
the
my
two of you?
wife. And yeah, so I'm taking my wife. BYU fans better be nice to her.
Yeah, she's pregnant too, so be very kind, guys. We
Yeah,
don't need
be
any-
really nice.
Trick Dave, not her. Hey, but
Yeah, that's fine. That's
Stool
fine.
Presidente did give BYU's Creamery a 9.6, 9.7.
9 points. He literally
Oh, yeah.
said he said if Utah's bookstore is a 9.2, then this one's a 9.6. So suck
Yeah.
on that, Dave.
No,
No,
not
but-
that in Google searches.
No, but
listen,
at least the U has a nuclear reactor. I don't know why that's important, but we have a nuclear reactor.
it's
at
a
the
good
U.
joke. It's a good joke. BYU has a creamery. Utah has a nuclear reactor. But no,
I'm beating at your own jokes
Hey,
today, Dave.
I will.
I'm stealing your jokes. Those recycled old jokes.
I have been so complimentary of BYU.
We've
this
been doing this for
podcast.
too long.
I've been so complimentary. I'm going to keep it going. BYU has a good creamery. I'll admit that. I'm an ice cream lover, connoisseur. Their creamery is so good. It is the second best creamery at a university in the state of Utah. Shout out to Aggies of Utah State, the best creamery in the state of Utah.
Well, Dave Portnoy said it's the best campus ice cream he's ever had in his life.
And he's never been to Logan.
Maybe.
Probably never will.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't want to.
Man, you know Dave's a hater when he says the Utah State Creamery is better than the BYU.
That's just facts. Facts don't care about your feelings, Sean.
You can't steal that line from me. You're always getting triggered by the facts.
Oh, did you come up with that line? I've been using that for years. Listen, I have respect for BYU fans because they are preordained as BYU fans. In the pre-earth life, you know, there was this whole thing going on, and they said some of us, 2/3 wanted agency, and a third said we want to be forced, we want to be told what to do. And there were some fence sitters who couldn't decide. They're like, we kind of want to be told what to do. We kind of want agency. What are we going to do? And they said, all right, the great compromise of the pre-earth life, we are going to create an institution with a thing called the honor code where they force you to keep the rules. And that's what got all these pre-earth life fence sitters to get on board with the plan, come to earth and go to BYU where they have to live the honor code. They have to be forced to do it. The rest of us, we deal with our agency. We were fully on board, but so respect. They're preordained.
Says the man who went to BYU Law School, spent 3 years at BYU.
It was cheap.
All right, you guys, that's all. Does anyone have any other closing remarks? I think we got to wrap it up here.
I don't know.
Okay, so
special teams. Shout out the special teams. I think that's a big advantage for BYU. I've not heard anyone talk
It
about it.
is.
I think it's a big advantage for BYU. So we got to keep an eye on that. Utah just has to, if there's no big plays on special teams, it's a win for Utah.
Well, and it's crazy. This is more of NFL talk I did on my podcast a couple weeks ago, but special teams account for like 22% of the overall total plays in a football game, and they're just kind of like looked at as like a nothing type of thing. But you can win and lose games on special teams, especially in the kicking game. So Will Farron, I think, is back on track. I got nervous about him. He had a 24 kick streak, and then he missed a field goal in 3 straight games.
He
But
missed
he has
3.
hit 2 in a row. Well, he missed 3 total, but like 1 per game for 3 games. But he's hit 2 in a row, including some clutch ones against Arizona. So I'm hoping he's back because I do think there's a very good chance it'll come down to who can hit like a long field goal at some point in the game, maybe at the very end. Who knows?
Look,
And I will say,
last year,
he has ice in his veins. Like being able to kick on the road in this rivalry, like with that kind of pressure, is actually insane.
I want Utah's got to get the game out of reach. Look, last year BYU had a kick return for a touchdown, and they had a game-sealing long field goal. Either of those plays don't, and Utah didn't have any nice special teams plays that I remember. BYU won that game with their special teams in a lot of ways. So no one's talking about it, but Utah, I think, is outmatched in special teams, and they need to step it up.
I was curious. What do you feel about Utah's kicker, Dave?
He's young.
Because
He can kick it over the mountain, but he can't kick it over. He can't choose which mountain he kicks it over. It's just kind of, he missed. I think it was it one of the early games when he missed a PAT, and then he made a 52-yarder right after. if it comes down to Utah kicking for the win from 40 yards, like I don't feel confident. I think he's going to be really good. He's true freshman. We can't rely on the kicker, and we can't rely on BYU's kicker to miss. So special teams, we got to remove them from the equation some way.
I will say real quick, Sean, before we close, about BYU's defense. Isaiah Glasker, Jack Kelly, they are the two best duo on, I was listening to college radio the other day, the two best duo in defense in college football right now.
Yeah,
so I do feel with Dampier's inability to throw plus 20 yards downfield, he's 3 of 19 or 3 of 16, something like that. I do think Isaiah Glasker, Jack Kelly running and containing Dampier isn't going to be that big of an issue.
That's the hope. That's
the hope.
If you're a BYU fan, that's the hope, because like I just said, if they just keep getting 6 yards, you get 6 yards enough plays in a row, and you just had a fantastic drive where you gobbled up tons of clock and still scored.
Yeah.
I really think it's going to come down to that third down. That's, I'm not some expert, but I've been watching football for 40 years, following as close as I can since I was a little kid, and I'm 44. And when you have a team in third and long and you don't stop them, it is like just crushing to your defense. So to me, we've got to get third down stops. Dave, you had something to say?
I was just going to say, I don't necessarily disagree with what you said. Both those are great linebackers. And I think they have a really good third one too. But Utah, probably has the best offensive tackle combo in the country. And there can be a lot of getting to the second level and blocking linebackers. So that's probably going to be a very interesting matchup to watch, is Utah's offensive line releasing and getting to some linebackers on the running plays. Can they do it? And they're athletic tackles, but that's some really good linebackers. So I don't think it's as much Dampier against the linebackers as it is some blockers trying to get after those guys. If you're leaving the game for one-on-ones with Dampier with the ball against Glasker, I don't feel good about that. You can't do that.
Yeah. Well, it's even just them trying to, stop off some of the dump offs to running backs and things like that. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm very, very excited. I've not been this excited about a BYU Utah game in a long, long time. Last year I probably would have been, but I was out of the country, so I didn't get a chance to even really watch it. But and for so long, when BYU was out of a conference, it just wasn't nearly as fun. The rivalry just wasn't the same. It was like Utah was playing in the Pac-12, and we were trying to just squeeze the game in where we could. BYU was playing for nothing because they weren't even in a conference. So it just feels like the rivalry is more officially back. And so both teams ranked for the first time in a long time, only the fourth time in the rivalry history where both teams are ranked. We should note that in the 3 previous times, the home team was the higher ranked team, and they also won all 3 of those games. So if that trend stays true, that would mean a BYU win tomorrow. But you never know. Anything can happen in this game. So I'm excited.
Can I make one more point? I think we can't just gloss over this. Like, there's big implications on this game too, right? Like, Texas Tech appears to be head and shoulders best team in the conference. Everybody else looks bad. Iowa State's got a million injuries. They don't look good. Arizona State just got absolutely bushwhacked by Utah. Kansas State's hot garbage. Kansas just, they're not looking as good. Cincinnati, maybe that's the next best
looking
team.
Good.
So second place, meaning that other position, that other spot in the Big 12 championship it's really Utah or BYU is kind of what everyone's thinking at this point. A lot can change. If BYU were to win, Utah, in order to get that spot, would need BYU to lose 3 games. They're going to lose to Texas Tech. They would need them to lose 2 more because they'd have the tiebreaker. That's not going to happen. At least maybe, but who knows? And so this is the inside track, and whoever loses this game, especially if Utah loses, they're pretty much eliminated. If BYU loses this game, they'd have to beat Texas Tech, and hope that Utah loses one. Is not good. So, and then, you go to that Big 12 conference championship game, and if you can beat Texas Tech, you're in the playoff. And there's a small outside chance if you play well before then that we get 2 teams. So, big implications on the season as a whole.
I do think BYU ends the season with 2 losses, though. They are 0-6 against Iowa State, which is who we play right after Utah, and BYU does struggle after emotional games.
Yeah, this next few weeks for BYU is very, very difficult stretch. But
yeah, they're not going to lose 3, though.
I didn't expect BYU to be 6-0 at this point. So I'm loving what I'm seeing out of Bear Bachmeier. He's getting better every week. True freshman, and he doesn't seem to be too fazed by the pressure. And so I'm very optimistic, but I'm also very aware that Utah is very well coached. They always show up for this rivalry game. Always, 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 including when they're on their 3rd string quarterback. They show up. So hopefully BYU shows up, because far too often BYU is the one that doesn't seem to show up. So,
Yeah.
all right, you guys, this is fun. That's all the time we have for today. Please follow us on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and Spotify and everything. We are out. Peace. Cool.
Go Cougs! Go Cougs! Woo!